recording. Not getting fired today. Yeah, so I had this job, and it was .NET, actually, which is a strongly typed back-end Microsoft programming language. It's kind of like the pleated pants of programming languages. Not very sexy, but it gets the job done. I did okay. It was a job. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Like the week that my boss sat me down and like literally taught me character by character what to type in order to make the code. I went home every night and I was like, I can't do this. I need to quit. I can't do this. I'm an anthropology major. What am I doing here? I just wanted to save the world. And then at the end of the week, I somehow like started to get it. Not like in a good way, but in a sort of like, oh, this is what a class is kind of way. This was not like a conceptual like, here's your introduction to programming. It was just like, type this stuff and figure it out. And I did. And it like, dry was not on the menu. Didn't understand that. Just copying and pasting code everywhere, but it worked, so okay. Kept getting jobs that I was like just not quite qualified for, and then like just getting a little bit better. And finally I wound up, I don't know, had a bunch of jobs, worked mostly as a front-end developer, so JavaScript is my jam. The moment that I really loved it was with a library named jQuery, where you could like take a DOM element and you could call a method called like slide down or fade out, and it would do that. It would like, or like just sort of fade away or fade in. You could do either one. And I was like, oh, damn, that's easy and really cool. More of this, please. And I just kept going. What's that?
Is that a movie?
No. It's I'll show you it at some point. No, it's actually just a JavaScript library, so you like load it in. This is actually a nice little segue into how JavaScript runs. So JavaScript is the language of the front-end web. We have an HTML document, and we've got something very special here. Loading in a piece of JavaScript, which is here on my computer. No, that's not JavaScript. That's just a crappier copy of this HTML. If I'd done this right, I could put some JavaScript in here and manipulate all of the elements in this HTML. jQuery is a pile of JavaScript that someone else wrote that I can load in and then do cool things to my DOM elements. Whatever my page has on it, I can do what they've set up. I can call the functions that they've created on those DOM elements and make them do cool stuff. And yeah, it looks a little bit like iMovie, but no, yeah, it's called jQuery. It's like the Swiss Army knife of JavaScript. People don't use it as much anymore. React is like the self-driving car of JavaScript, and that's sort of where we're going ultimately.
So like on a lot of websites recently, I noticed that like the transition between pages is really smooth. Is that also JavaScript?
Almost definitely, yeah. Yeah, JavaScript lets you do really cool transitions between pages. Rails uses JavaScript to transition between pages and change the URL without actually making a whole new request. That's called Turbo Links, and it's awesome. All right, before we dive straight into that, I want to do a little overview of the mod. We're learning a second language. We're gaining another superpower. It's going to be awesome. There are 3 essential pillars of front-end web programming. Spoiler alert, one of them is JavaScript. Another is HTML, and the third one is CSS. We've probably experienced these first 2 before, yeah, to some degree or another. Not asking you to be a CSS expert. What's HTML for? What does it give us? Why is it useful? Why is it something that we want to get on board with and use? Bobby. It's absolutely the text that you see on the website, and it's one more important thing too. I'm going to call this content, just because sometimes it's other stuff. What else does HTML give you?
I'm thinking more like body. So HTML is the skeleton, CSS is the skin, and JavaScript is the nerve. So what makes the entire body work? Yeah, I've seen that graphic too. Is it in the labs, or is that somewhere else?
I should have twice.
Great. It's a great analogy. And I think the important thing there is the word skeleton. HTML is the skeleton of our web pages. It gives us structure to the content. It's not just a pile of text, it's a pile of text in boxes. And some of those boxes are in other boxes. Some of those boxes are empty, some of them are really full. But we have a hierarchy of content, a hierarchy of DOM elements, a hierarchy of HTML tags. we have what is called, in computer science circles, a tree. And we usually, for the DOM at least, draw it upside down, of nodes from top all the way down to the bottom. Each node can have many children. Each child has only one parent. It's a tree. It's a type of graph. HTML is content and structure. We're still going to write a lot of HTML. We're not going to focus on it in too much depth, but JavaScript is a great way to learn more about what HTML can do. The whole purpose of front-end JavaScript is to change our HTML and our CSS indirectly. But that is what we're going to use JavaScript for all month. CSS is, I think you said it, but let's zoom back in on that. Yeah.
Before you do the HTML, when we say node, what is that algorithm?
When we say not,
Node.
oh, node. Yeah. So node is another computer science term for a place in a graph. A tree is a type of graph. Some graphs can go around in circles and can sort of branch out in more ways than a tree can. A node is a term for one of these. An HTML element is a node in the tree. Does that answer your question? Make sense? Sweet. Yeah. So the words node, element, HTML tag, the three of those are somewhat interchangeable. When you're talking about the relationship to other nodes, you're probably going to use the word node. When you're talking about like a JavaScript variable that points at a chunk of HTML, probably going to use the word element. When we're talking about like a piece of HTML, not worrying about JavaScript, we're probably going to use the word tag. But those are all sort of connected concepts, and there's a sort of a one-to-one relationship there. Cool? Trying to focus more on sort of like defining terms today, so keep me honest with that. Thanks for that question. CSS, what does it do?
Is it pretty?
Makes it pretty, yeah, absolutely. Defines the color, the shape, the layout, or a lot of other stuff too. Some of the cool like rollover effects that you may see on websites, pure CSS. You can do full-on animations in CSS, but CSS is the style. CSS is the appearance. And lest you think that this is merely surface level, CSS makes websites usable, not just for you and I to understand the relationships between all of this content, but also for people with disabilities. CSS has a really, really important role to play. HTML does too. And finally, JavaScript. What does it do in front-end web programming?
It's magic.
Yes. Let's get specific about the magic too. What does it do? Yeah. JavaScript gives us a measure of interactivity on the web. So we've had interactivity in Rails before. Interactivity based on clicking on links, going to other pages, posting back forms. All of that stuff is somewhat interactive. But JavaScript gives you interactivity without leaving a page. Maybe with leaving a page too, but we can do all of the things we did in Rails without leaving a page using JavaScript. That's going to be our focus, this mod. We can do all sorts of things with JavaScript. We can make games, we can make animations, but our focus is going to be on making websites with JavaScript that can create, read, update, and delete data without leaving a page. We're going to make what are called single-page apps, or SPAs, if you like. And those apps will allow us to do everything we've done in Rails so far, but without leaving a page.
Why is it so important not to leave a page? We could do everything, like you said, Rails
Yeah.
can do the request and respond and have it coming back and forth. Why do we have to stick in one page?
That's a great question. That's a phenomenally great question. What do you think?
I guess if it's not necessary, you don't have to move a whole page's content.
Yeah. What happens every time I go to a new page in the browser? Yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed, but like when you go to a page in a browser, oh, I'm distracting myself already. Woo, okay. I like to play this game with mod too. Let's go to the New York Times. See what bad news there is today. Great. No, didn't want that. Have we spent some time in this inspect panel? We are going to spend all of our time in the inspect panel this mod. Keep it open at all times, because when you get errors, they'll be here. Or hit the escape key and they'll be down here. It can be like the red wedding in here, and you wouldn't know unless you, I don't watch Game of Thrones, I just know how to make the jokes. All right, so here's our network activity, and I'm, spoilers already. If I refresh this page, this will show what? Has anyone used the network tab before? Oh, it's gonna be your best friend. This will show all of the requests that a page makes. When I refresh the page, how many will there be? Who thinks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just ballpark. Okay, you don't have to be exactly right. No measurement. Are we holding out for a higher number? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. It's just 3? Well, so far. But when I refresh, it's going to do all of the things again. Ready? Drum roll, please. Should have done Price is Right rules. 105, and it's probably not done. Oh, there's one as well. Yeah, so a lot of resources went into making this page happen. I trust the good engineers in the New York Times. Former TCS is now there. But all this stuff doesn't need to be loaded every time. If I'm going from one page to another, not only can I give you a cool transition from that one page to the other, if none of this needs to change, I can keep all these resources with me. Some of them aren't going to be relative to the new page, relevant to the new page. There's a way. I can just find it. Yes. But if those JavaScripts aren't going to change, I don't need to load them again. Oh, here we go. It's the filter thing. So some of them are actual requests that JavaScript made. You can make requests with JavaScript. Some of them are JavaScript. Some of them are CSS. This probably isn't going to change much from page to page. It could, but it probably won't. Some of them are images. Single-page apps help us conserve the resources of making requests to a server. Every time a client makes a request to a server, which, according to the tradition of our people, we draw as this weird thing. This has to happen a bunch of times. Spots, fewer times. It's not a revolution, but it's another way of doing things that you as developers should know how to do. All right, so this is the request response cycle. How does JavaScript play into this? What's the path of JavaScript through this cycle? Do we remember the request response cycle? Do we want a refresher on that? Yes? Okay. What do we call this thing that I've got? It's supposed to be a laptop. I have a micro painting, believe it or not. Client, bingo. Yeah, the client is the client, not just because it looks like a shitty laptop, but because it is the one that initiates this arrow, which is called the request. Yeah. Which is just a pile of text saying, hey, thing over here, this is what I want. Can I, please? What do we call this? Yeah. And then what does the server do? Yeah. Sends back this arrow called response that is actually just a piece of text too. Then has a status code and a body and all those headers in it. Then the client gets it back. Where does the JavaScript start out? If I'm a developer and I write a big pile of JavaScript that makes a lot of cool animations, where is that stored? It's just fun. I heard server and response, which is awesome because yes, both. Starts out on the server and it gets provided to the client in the response. The client's actually going to request it specifically from the server in a separate request. All of these JavaScripts, my browser requested from NewYorkTimes.com. Here's my response. There's the body of it. Here's a bunch of really hard to read minified JavaScript. In order to make it smaller to go across the wires, We suck out all the white space because browsers don't care. But it's this lovely little button here that will sort of flip it back out. They've sort of minified all their variables. Don't write code like this. There are machines that will chew up your code and spit out something smaller. This is the body of a response from the server. When my browser loaded the HTML, in the head of this document, probably, could be other places, there was a script tag with a URL that matches the URL that this request was made to. There are so many of them here that I actually can't find the specific one. You're gonna have to trust me. The browser found this script tag and was like, okay, gotta make another request, getting ready, I'm gonna make a request to that URL. The server's like, I got some JavaScript for you, here you go. Comes back in a response, and the browser takes that JavaScript and does what with it? What's that? Yeah, it probably does all of these things. It probably does some query selecting to get elements off the DOM. It probably modifies those elements off the DOM. What did you say?
Oh, I was going to say, changes the HTML stuff.
Absolutely. Big picture, it runs the code. It takes the code and it executes the code here in the browser. Unlike Ruby, where code is stored on the server, executed on the server, and the resulting HTML is passed back, JavaScript lives on the server, gets requested by the client, and then gets run in the browser itself. At the point that the JavaScript gets run, the server is kind of out of the picture. We don't care about it anymore. We can go back, but we don't have to.
So compared to Ruby, if you have a faster computer or faster client, then you would run JavaScript faster.
Yes.
Or faster.
Yes. If your browser is faster than, if the client is faster than the server, then the JavaScript will run faster there. Usually that's not the case if you have a decent server, but that's an important trade-off to keep track of when you're just deciding whether to do something in your back end. The server. Or the front end.
But Ruby-wise, it wouldn't matter because Ruby does everything, just push it to the.
Yeah, if you're like sorting a list, you could do that on the server or on the client. You want to do it whichever one's likely to be faster. Probably the server, but there's an argument either way. All right, that's the big picture. JavaScript is a language that gets executed right here in the browser and can manipulate the HTML or the CSS. Question or head scratch?
Oh, just
Great. Okay, I want to talk about 3 pillars of JavaScript that we're going to deal with this mod. I don't know if I've left myself enough room for these, but 3 pillars, and we're going to cover them all by Wednesday. Yeah. Number 1, this one we've already talked about, DOM manipulation. Yeah, didn't leave myself enough room at all. 2, event handlers. We'll talk about them tomorrow. For today, we're just going to manipulate the DOM however we want to. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to make that DOM manipulation happen when the user, the person using your website, does something to a piece of HTML. Bits of HTML can listen for events like clicks or mouse overs or scrolls or literally more than I can even list here or even know about. Elements can listen for those and run bits of JavaScript in functions when those events happen in the browser. We'll talk about those tomorrow. Cool? They're fun. Pillar 3, making requests using fetch. Sometimes we want more data than we have available to us when the page loads. Sometimes we click the read more articles button, don't make a new request response cycle for the entire HTML of it. We just grab a little bit of HTML or JavaScript, or I'm sorry, JSON, and then we update the DOM based on that. You scroll to the bottom of a Twitter page. How do we feel about Beyonce in here? Good. I'd hate for this to go sour on the first day. What?
I hope not.
I mean, if you don't like Beyonce, I don't want to hear about it. Oh no, she just doesn't have the many tweets. All right. My music tastes have not changed that much since the 90s. So we get to the bottom of this page, and see that loading icon? And then more tweets. They're very fast. But loading icon, more tweets. Loading icon, more tweets. If I click on this like button here, a new request happens, but the whole page doesn't reload. You have that nice little heart animation, and the number of likes updates. If I open this in a different tab, like the backend knows about it. The backend where like the giant Twitter weird database is with all the likes in it has been updated. If you go to this page, it's got 149 likes. A new request has happened, but based on JavaScript. That's our third pillar.
Two unrelated questions. One is that why when you leave a tab open with so much stuff loading like that, it's slowing it down?
Probably has to do with how big the DOM is. But yes, websites can keep making requests in the background if they want to. And maybe that could, yeah. It's probably just that they've done some weird memory stuff in their JavaScript that wasn't so good.
Because I think that's what happened with Resource. If I keep scrolling down, it's doing it there, like a bunch of stuff.
Yes, that could totally do it.
So second question
Yeah.
is, what resource is it eating off?
Probably memory, which has to do with like what variables exist in JavaScript. We're not going to dive deeply into like memory management in JavaScript, but we also probably won't be doing things that are so complex that will slow down a tab. If you do, that sounds fun, and tell me how you did it. All right, so 3 pillars. These 3 pillars are going to turn into 3 questions that we're going to ask ourselves. Some of this will make more sense by the end of the week, but I'm going to set it up now, and then I'm going to give you a break, because one of the other lecture norms is if you sit still for 40 minutes, like you stop absorbing new information, so go to the bathroom, get a drink, stand up. This is a slightly different order. Bingo. When X event happens, I want to do Y fetch and then slap Z on the DOM. Didn't like high school algebra. We'll assume it's substitute values for X, Y, and Z. When a click on this specific button happens, when a scroll to the bottom of the page happens, when a hover over an image element happens, I want to do a post to the likes route, a get to the more tweets route, a delete to the marshmallows route, and then, not enough to update the backend. We have to update our DOM too to reflect the change we just made. We need to slap more tweets on the DOM. We need to slap a heart animation on the DOM. Maybe we slap something off the DOM if we deleted it. Those are our 3 pillars. And these are the 3 questions that are going to guide us through figuring out how we're going to build front-end functionality in JavaScript. Okay.
So when you do why, so you're actually doing like on your Rails, you're actually using a route for that, right?
Oh, hell yes. Yeah. One thing we're not going to do right away is build the backend. We will probably get back into that on Friday, if all goes according to plan. And if it doesn't, we'll roll with that too. For now, we're going to focus on the front end, but work with either publicly available APIs or this nifty little thing will make a REST API out of JSON for you. We'll talk about that more on Wednesday. But yes, ultimately, we're going to be full stack developers this month. We're going to create a Rails backend API that will run on the server, as well as some JavaScript code that interacts with that API. Send the JavaScript along with HTML here, and our JavaScript is going to go back to our API to get whatever it needs from the backend that we also build. That's when we become full stack. Backend and front end. Same time, or back end, more likely. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Awesome. With one more hand.
So when you use the fetch, that's me using the HTTP to grab route.
Correct. Fetch is a tool with which we are going to make requests using a specific verb to a specific route. But
You don't have to build an API to interact with the backend.
you have to build an API to interact with the backend. The API is the backend, but you don't have to interact with an API to write JavaScript or manipulate it.
No, in the past we have interact with data directly, not through API.
True. Yes. If you're in Ruby, you don't need Fetch to interact with an API or database. We'll use stuff like, I don't know, HTTP party or gems to interact with APIs. But in JavaScript, in order to get more data from an API, we'll use Fetch and then export requests. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday. So let's circle back on that question. Take 4 minutes, and I'll see you back here. All right, I don't want to be a jerk, but I also don't want to waste your time, so I'm going to just start so that people get the idea that I mean business about timing. I completely,
Great.
first day. I want to go back to something that I forgot, my bad, which is going over the key questions of what we're even talking about, because that tends to help to focus me and help other people know what's in store. We've probably answered a bunch of these key questions already. But what can JavaScript do? I want to circle back to this afternoon a little bit. We can look at some fun sites. But for now, I want to focus on the Java questions too. Where does JavaScript run?
You said it's in the server.
It's in response and it runs actually in the browser on the client. Yeah. Not the only place JavaScript can run. If you're doing something like Node.js with Express, it can definitely run on the server. We're not doing that this month. For the purposes of Mod 3, it runs on the browser.
That way you can like delete stuff from the page,
Yes.
but like the header and all that.
Yes. Yes. The browser has the DOM, the object version of all of those HTML tags available for manipulation, deletion, all of that. What is JavaScript for? What is front-end JavaScript for specifically?
Oh, I was just repeating the question.
Like,
Sorry.
like, what's the discount rate?
Right on time. Yeah. What do we do with JavaScript on the front end? Yeah, interact with the HTML and CSS. JavaScript, I didn't tell you, it was invented in 1995, the exact same year that Ruby was invented, actually. But it had a very different path. It came from the Netscape team. A person called Brendan Eich invented it in 2 weeks. So, if you get frustrated with JavaScript, remember that it was 10 days, apparently, and all his fault. No. You can't blame everything on Brendan, unfortunately. Because Brendan Eich is not writing JavaScript to be used for, like, ever. It just happened that way. He didn't have the foresight to spend more time in that on it. And he built it to be very forgiving of the types of errors that beginners make. I actually have a disagreement with him over whether that's actually good for beginners. I think error messages are great for beginners. They tell you exactly where to start debugging. JavaScript does not always throw errors when I wish it would. But it's meant to be a little more friendly in that way. It's been updated since then. We'll talk more about some of the ways it's been updated in week 3 as a prep for React, which is a very fancy new way of doing JavaScript. But it has been updated. I think it's a garbage language because a lot of things about it are unpredictable. It doesn't always throw the errors that Ruby would. Some of the things are named weird stuff. Methods are strange. Ruby acts about the way you would expect it to, and JavaScript sometimes just plain does not. Often in JavaScript, there are 5 different ways to do the same thing. Which one is better? Depends. With JavaScript, as a developer, you have to know all 5 ways and the trade-offs before you choose them. Or you pick one and you keep going until it breaks, and then maybe you pick another one. That's what learning JavaScript is like. There are a lot of like, crap, this won't work. I'm going to go back and redo the whole thing. That, I think, is really great for you as a developer. It's also really frustrating for beginner developers. Don't give up. There is a limited amount of bullshit that JavaScript can throw at you. And hopefully you'll see it all in these 3 weeks and then never have to worry about any of it again. Rachel?
JavaScript just always feels like English to me. Or, English, you just have to know how to do certain things. Like, it doesn't have a nice structure of how to do stuff, but then English, I remember reading something that English is the best language for crosswords because we have so many strange nuances to the language. That like we have like 5 words for something, but in French there's only 1 word. So it's like you can make puzzles and stuff around it. So that's just always what JavaScript has felt like to me, where it's like, screw you, learn these rules, they don't make sense, but once you know them, you can make something.
I love that analogy. I might steal it. Yeah, I think in the sense that like in English, words that end in O-U-G-H can just be pronounced any fucking way. You just gotta figure it out. Whereas in like Spanish, lovely language, most things just are pronounced the way the letters are. But great for crosswords. Lots of weird words that combine like 4 consonants in a row. Hard to do that in a language with like strict pronunciation rules. Yeah, JavaScript is really flexible. That can be a terrible thing if you're looking for some order. You have to put your own order on JavaScript. You have to know what you're doing and then do it. But you have the freedom to do whatever you want. That is a great thing when you want to do a specific thing that is hard. It's a terrible thing when it's not giving you the support that you might need. Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. Why is JavaScript also amazing and worth learning? Because it's really flexible and because it is a very commonly spoken language, like English. If you know JavaScript, a lot of written code is unlocked for you. You can write JavaScript in a multitude of places, from the front end of a browser to the back end of a server, to native apps, to places I probably can't even imagine. JavaScript is one of the most commonly written languages on the planet. It brings all developers together. That's a beautiful thing to me. How can I write JavaScript without wanting to tear my apples from their sockets? You have to run your code. You have to run your code. You have to run your code. Every 3 lines that you write, probably. Maybe more often. You have to run your code. You have to read your error messages if you have them. You have to read your error messages. You have to understand your error messages. You have to remember what error messages meant the last time and help that inform your understanding of what your error messages mean this time. You have to read your error messages. You have to practice good debugging skills. You have to practice good debugging skills. You have to think critically about why a bug is happening. You have to console log your variables, figure out what assumptions you're making about what their values will be, and then test those assumptions to see if they were right. Follow the thread of the bug back to where it originated, get curious about why and how, and only once you understand it, then fix it. You have to have a good debugging process. If you are not in the habit of any of these 3 things, it's not too late, but this is your moment. You gotta get good at that to make JavaScript worth writing and fun to write. Okay, questions about any of that? Louis.
That socket, is
Yeah.
that the eyeball socket or the web socket?
Oh, yeah, probably an eyeball socket, but web socket. Maybe. I don't know, I think it's possible in JavaScript.
That was-
No, that's good. Come on, buddy. Bring it on. Let's talk about the DOM. What is the DOM? Why do I care about it? Carla. It is. DOM stands for Document Object Model. However, Document Object Model, what is the Document Object Model?
Browser, like the window, like all the things that you see.
It is both kind of the browser and kind of the window, and definitely the way that you see and interact with it. What were you going to say? Absolutely. A representation of the HTML in object form. That's the object and document object model, so that we can modify it and communicate with it. I've got a JavaScript, HTML. I want to open my index.html file in Chrome. And here's a beautiful website. So much CSS on this, I can't even understand. Here is a visual representation of the document object model. Some things are above some other things. Every box, not every box, some of these boxes have children. This UL, this div, and this H1, what are they children of? Yeah. And this UL, what children does it have? L-I-L-I. This is a tree, and the DOM helps us interact with it. So I can do something like document.query selector. Hi. The way that I do this is using objects, methods, functions, parameters, arrays, array-like things, and more methods, functions, to actually manipulate what is currently in the browser window. This is a representation of all of the bits of the DOM. I can do things to it, but it's a JavaScript representation of it. Yeah.
One more simple example of objects.
What are some objects in the DOM besides the document? So, cool thing about the DOM is document's an object. Query selector is a function, but it's a function that returns an object. So if I run this function, just like a method in Ruby can return a thing, a string, a number, a hash, an object, an instance, document.querySelector returns the UL in this case, based on what I passed in. Document is an object. The return value of query selector is an object. Technically, even functions are objects, but we'll talk about that later. Many more, but I want to keep moving. All right. Yeah.
Document object
I think it's the other way, but I don't remember. Yes. No, it is. It's window document. Yeah, if you ever forget that, document.window.
They are parents. They are siblings.
Apparently not. Yeah. Window.document is the whole thing. Document.window is undefined. Objects, if you ask them for a property they don't have, will give you undefined. Hashes give you nil, similar but different. Yeah.
I'm trying to relate this with the Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
And you found that the document object is the data in one class.
Such a good question. Objects in Ruby are, objects in JavaScript are more like hashes in Ruby than they are like instances, I would say. With that said, JavaScript has classes and instances too. But they're different. And we'll talk about how they're different more in week 3, how you can make your own. The DOM nodes that you get back from like document.querySelector, they are members of a class, but most of the commonalities are just sort of like in what properties you can access from them and what methods you can call on them. Yeah. Let's talk about parts of an HTML tag. I want to talk about what attributes, IDs, and classes are. And then I want to talk about how to create, read, update, and delete DOM nodes. And if we have time, I'd like to do a quick exercise together. So let's do this. I'm going to start with this div. I'm going to start with this part of the div. What would you call this? I want to get on the same page as far as terminology, because I'm going to use this terminology, and I want to make sure no one is lost. Also, a huge part of using code, writing code, collaborating on code especially, is talking about code. If you can talk about code well, you can nail a job interview. Let's do that here and now. What would you call this?
Closing tag.
Bingo. Yeah, this is the closing tag for this div. Pretty simple, DOM. Sometimes it's hard to find that closing tag or figure out when it's for. If you ever need to, just like a missing bracket, it will underline the beginning for you, as long as your HTML is sane. All right, so this here, unlike the closing tag, is a what? Opening tag. Opening, closing, done. All right, opening tags have other stuff that closing tags can't. This is what's called, well, what is it? Not called. Does anyone know? Yeah, it's an attribute. Is it an attribute just because it says class?
So, that's something to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that is true about this div. This div has a class attribute that has some values to it. Can anyone spot another attribute on this HTML? Probably. Yeah, we're using ID. There you go. All right. Let's talk about the value of this class attribute. Type, class, value, those are all attributes as well. Each of those attributes do slightly different things to that HTML tag. Let's talk about the value of this class attribute. How many classes are there on this div? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have to actually count. 1, 2, 3, 8. There are 8. This is really confusing to a lot of people, but it's really, really important. This div has 8 classes on it. It has a class of this, it has a class of may, a class of not, class of seem, class of like, class of a, class of good, class of idea. Those are all separate classes, separated by spaces. That's really important to know when you query select. That's null. That's null. That's not. I can query select based on one of those classes and get back all of the elements, well, no, the first element that has a this class on it. Or if I want an element that has a this and a may class on it, that's the query selector for that. On the element itself, we separate with spaces. In a selector, 2 dots, no spaces. Spaces have a different meaning in a query selector. Yeah.
So the only reason we put like more than just the word this, not this, is if there's another class to say like this famous like.
Yeah, exactly. This div is a this, but it's also a may. It's nice to have that flexibility. You don't have to lock yourself into one class that does everything for this div. It can be more than one thing at one time. Cool. How many classes are in this input? Great. You're in great shape. How many IDs can you have on an element? 1. 1 and only 1 forever. Unlike classes, IDs, only 1. You should not have spaces in an ID. You should not start an ID with a number. What is also true about the ID of an element? What should be true in your entire document? Yeah, your ID should be unique. Just like your IDs in your database table should be unique, your DOM elements should not share IDs. Chrome will not throw up if you do that. Nothing horribly bad will happen immediately. But eventually, you're going to try and get an element by ID. It's not going to be there. Don't do it. What does the value of an input do?
Is that the thing that you see on the button?
In this case, it's a text box, but yes, it's the text inside of the text box. On a button, it would show you that if it was an input type submit, that would be the text on the button as well. Yeah, those slightly different things in those two contexts. Yeah. All right, let's do a quick pass through CRUD, and then we'll do the beginning of this exercise, and you can continue it if you like afterwards. Ready? Okay. Let's create an element. What function do I need to run in order to create a new DOM element in my HTML? Yeah. And what am I going to pass in to create element? Yeah. And I want to be specific about this. The data type that I'm going to pass in, a very common one in JavaScript, Looks exactly the way that that same data type would in Ruby. Literally just fill time on the eraser. What's that? String. Bingo. Thank you. There's a better eraser too that actually erases, but I appreciate the assist. Yeah, we're passing a string with the letters div in it. When we pass that string into the create element function, oh no, we get another very common occurrence in JavaScript, which is an uncaught reference error. I'm going to read this error. Create element is not defined. Great thought. All right, let's do some testing. Our theory is it's because of the semicolon. Let's throw a semicolon in there and see if it works. Drum roll, please.
Is there a child of the document?
Yeah. If we're going to create an element, we have to call that method on the document. For terminology's sake, I'm going to refer to functions that are a property of an object. Document is an object. This thing after the dot is called a property. It's kind of like a key and a hash in Ruby. Functions, when they are a property of an object, are methods. Otherwise, they're just functions. All right, pass the same thing in. It works without even a semicolon. What do we have here? I can think of 3 ways to describe this.
An opening tag and a closing.
An opening tag and a closing tag for a div. It's an object. It's also a node. It's also an element. It's also a tag. Avi. Yeah, you can think of it as a box. Div is short for logical division, and this is a box. The weird thing about this box is, like, I created this element, but I got this div. That doesn't look like the same one. Where'd it go? Where? Why? What? Huh? Help. Yeah. Oh, all right. Let's try and save it to a variable. In JavaScript, you don't want to make a global variable. Use either const, let, or var. If you're looking for a good default, use const. Consts are required to never be reassigned. I can't then later go my div equals other thing, 5, string, whatever else. You'd be surprised at how often you don't have to do that. And if you do, use let. Var is also a thing. I'd use let instead. We'll talk more about why another time. Okay, assigned it to a variable. Still not seeing it. I think this is actually a good first step, but it is not sufficient to get it to pop up on the DOM. What do we want to do? Yeah. This is actually a really good thing. It's a really good thing that my div is not yet on the DOM because I want the choice in where it goes on the DOM. If I left that to JavaScript, it could choose anywhere. I want it to be in a specific place. You were saying body.append child? Yeah. If you want to slap it on the end of the body, that'd be a great choice. But we could also put it inside of this div. We could put it probably inside of this HTML. I don't know if that's a good idea. We could put it inside of that UL, but that's really not a good idea. ULs should not have divs in them. I like your idea. And if you ever need the body, it's a property of document. Document.body will get you the body. And we can indeed append my div to it. Ready? Yeah, go for it. Ooh, I liked that one. That one's great. All right, there it is. We've created an element. Questions?
Is there a way to an element that will wrap other elements in your document? So that you make a div that wrap that URL.
Yes. You probably have to remove it from the document, append it to the div, and then append the div to the body. Kind of a pain in the ass, but you could do it. Yeah, absolutely. We can actually do this all in one line. Don't use the marquee tag, it's deprecated. Ta-da. There's nothing wrong with assigning it to a variable first. You don't have to. Similarly to Ruby, we can take the return value of create element, pass it straight into document.body append as a parameter, and it'll do the thing. Either way is great. This might actually be too much code for one line. There is such a thing. Makes it hard to read. I don't know. Cool with this? Yeah.
Why are you using append instead of child?
Shorter. There is a slight difference. They work slightly differently. I don't remember what the difference is, but great resource for finding out more. If you're going to Google something about JavaScript, throw MDN in there. They tend to have really good documentation. Oh, actually, I'm going to go here because here's exactly what I'm looking for. The difference between append and append child. The good thing about JavaScript is a lot of people have written a lot of JavaScript before and have probably had the exact same problems as you are. So the same rules apply. Google your questions. Google your errors. May not be helpful, but it's a start. Tess, you had your hand up earlier.
I think I was just wondering that second body, or second topic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have someone thinking of where maybe you could use itself.
There is a self. We're not going to talk about it for the first week and a half at least. But yeah, it's weird. It's great. There's a self and a this. Oh. Did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Okay. So we created a thing. Unfortunately, neither this div nor this marquee are particularly exciting. I would like to update these elements. And in order to do that, I can do one of two things. Oh my God, there's so many things I can do actually. So I've still got this myDiv variable here hanging out. And if I hover over it, yeah, you've got this little light arrow to where the div is, and its dimension 374 pixels wide by 0 pixels high. If I want to add some text to my div, two things I can do. What are they? Yeah, what's the other one? Set attribute. Could do. Although I don't think set attribute will actually give me text inside of it. If I wanted to set the class, no. Set attribute is great though. If I wanted to set the class, the value, the ID even, although there's a faster way to do that. It's faster with class too. Faster with value too. Set attribute is useful, but it won't actually give us the inner text. The other way is inner text. Yeah, inner text and inner HTML work slightly differently. But if I just want some text in this div, I can actually use either. Beautiful. Love that div. When I did this, though, I didn't make a variable for the marquee. I want to put some text in the marquee. Right? This div now has some text in it. How can I update the marquee tag? Again, we've got different ways of doing the same. Oh, no. So I can do like document.body.get. No. Let's try. Yeah, Daniela.
You need a custom elements.
Ooh. Bingo. There is no get element by tag name, sadly. If you want to get an element by tag name, what you said earlier, query selector would work. But the most important thing here is that there are 5 different ways, literally 5, to get elements off of the DOM. Query selector all, get elements by tag name, get elements by class name, get element by ID. I don't love this method. It's perfectly fine. If you want to use it, go for it. But the annoying thing about this get elements by tag name method is what it returns. This is what's called an HTML collection. It's an instance of the HTML collection class, if we're getting technical. Don't worry about that too much. The sad thing about this HTML collection is not so much what it can do, but what it can't. all marquees. If I want to like for each over it, a lovely for each method on all arrays. Has anyone used it before? Some? Yeah. Well, you can't use it on this because it doesn't have one. Whoops. HTML collections are like an array-like thing, but they're not arrays. I can say all marquees, bracket and arrow, and still get the marquee tag out of it, but I can't for each it. It's a pain. I would much rather use query selector than get elements by tag name, or query selector all if I need more of them. Much rather use document.getElement by ID than any of these. If you've got one of these and you need to make an array out of them, do array.from, pass in all marquees, and this you can for each. Yeah. We're not going to actually do that. Chloe. Okay. All right, let's slap some inner text on this marquee. That's why marquee tag is fun. Great question. How do you think we would do it in query selector? Do you want to walk me through it? What? Yeah. There's a lot of ways to do the same thing. What I want you to focus on is not finding the right way. Try all of the ways. See what you like. It's part of developing your style as a JavaScript developer. What I like, document get element by ID, query selector all. Those are my three go-tos. You can do whatever you want. Danielle?
When you're saying that the all marquees with an index of 0, dot inner text, potato, is that just saying all marquees with the first index?
Yeah,
Is always going to be potato?
all marquees is what? Yeah, is it one marquee? No. No. It's an array-like thing of marquees. Yeah. Bracket 0, just like dot first in Rudy, or bracket 0 in Rudy, gets me the first one in that array-like thing. Since that's an object that is the first marquee, I can go to the internet text property and set it to string potato and get my thing. Thanks for asking that. Chloe.
Marquee is a tag.
Correct.
So
Yes.
when you create an element and put quotation mark, that means you're creating a HTML tag.
Correct. This here is just a string.
It's what?
Just a string.
A string.
Yes. But
It is a tag.
what comes back from this method is a tag. Think of this method, get elements. Sorry, nope. Wrong one. Yeah. I just realized that. Create elements also takes in a string. You can think of it as a machine. You put in a string, out pops an element from the DOM.
Yeah, but that element.
Correct. It's a marquee tag. And it's also a node.
But can you create a class? No, create. So when you do create elements, you are creating a HTML, which is defined by its tag. So it's a string, but it has to be a HTML tag.
Input is a string. It has to be one of the like strings that is the name of an HTML tag. It has to be like marquee or div or main or article or span or a p.
Okay, the class and ID, those are attributes.
Correct.
Those are not attributes.
Yeah, and if I want to set those, I can do that by calling properties on that DOM node.
mentioned. So like, if there's a bunch of key, if I want to specifically,
Mhm.
you have to set a class. So like,
Yeah, I think that's the best idea. Here's an example of that. I'm going to refresh my page, make some of this stuff go away. I've got a UL with 3 LIs in it. One way I could attack this problem, no, I want to query select that. There's the second child. One way. In my opinion, not the best way. This is complicated. There's a lot of brackets in here. I'm relying on it being a direct child of the parent. Be bold. Add classes. Add IDs. If you need to select that LI, give it a class that you'll remember. Bracelet. Oh, you know what? This is a really important thing to remember in front-end web development. One of the most important things to remember in front-end web development. If you take nothing else away from this lecture, it should be this. When you change your HTML, you have to refresh the page. I have seen people struggle with this on code challenges in much sillier instances than this. I have struggled with this in many silly instances. If you change your HTML, you have to refresh the page before you can actually get back your LI. With the exact same code, you have to refresh the page. You have to refresh the page. If you're debugging, first thing you should do, refresh the page. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't do anything, it doesn't do anything, but it won't ever hurt. Don't forget to refresh the page.
When you try to create even the document that fits,
Mm-hmm.
it's applied.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be everything.
It should be one of the like HTML tags that browsers will recognize. Like I think you could probably do like oh yeah, that super works. Don't do that. JavaScript has moments where you can do things that you shouldn't do. And HTML and browsers will let you create elements of your own. What will happen with this is some browser that is not quite as nice as Chrome will completely choke on it. We're writing JavaScript and HTML for all of the browsers that all of the people who come to our websites to run. And as such, we have to stick to like best practices of which HTML tags exist and behave in ways that we can predict, just testing our code on our local machines. I am currently running over my lecture time. I know you have more questions. I have more things to show you about the DOM. We have more time. So I will see you all this afternoon, if not before. Thank you very much.